Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and for many, many years, 7 years, I've told you that I thought that Ripple was Federal Reserve 2.0. That's what we're going to talk about in the group. I'm going to lay out for you what I think is going on, and when I say Federal Reserve 2.0, I don't mean as in the bad Federal Reserve. I mean to get us away from the Ponzi scheme, in my opinion, of what it has been. And I believe this will take us into a new era. And I believe that we, as retail that was here for the last 10 years while it needed to be tested, if we were smart enough to see it, I truly believe that it will be the equivalent of us having sat in that room at Jekyll Island when the Federal Reserve was formed, and we got to sit in the corner and get our tiny little piece of the pie. That's what I think this is. And I'm going to talk about that in the group. You can go to daixrp.com to join through Patreon, or you can click the join button right below any of my YouTube videos, or you can hit subscribe through X. I put the full video plus the extended video with no commercials in those. That's the deal. XRP will overtake Bitcoin's #1 spot. It's so obvious. I agree with this. I've said it 1,000 times. I think that XRP is the real king that ascends the throne. If you really believe in utility and what's coming and with a level playing field and regulation, and you understand the fact that none of this financial system can be built on Bitcoin, you can't tokenize, you can't create stable coins, you can't tokenize real world assets, you can't tokenize real estate, you can't tokenize treasuries, you can't do any of that on Bitcoin. All it can do is get liquidity from new buyers. That's it. XRP can get liquidity from new buyers, and it's going to tokenize all of that. And when you tokenize things, if I've learned anything, I remember when I first got here, if you wanted to buy anything, you had to go through Bitcoin. So Bitcoin got that initial liquidity. It had the most liquidity sitting beside it. The script is about to be flipped. Now look at this. This is from the Wolf of All Streets. Anytime Bitcoin dominance is falling, that typically means that altcoins are sucking up that liquidity. If you think that the people coming into this market are not going to be able to figure out, hey, wait a minute, there's that Bitcoin thing. CNBC keeps talking about that, but what are these other things? What do they do? That's what's going to happen. It's the same thing that happened to me when I got in this, and it's going to happen here. Now, so the Bitcoin dominance is cliff diving. There it is. You can see the dive right there from 61%. So I said, well, what was the Bitcoin dominance when XRP hit its all-time high in January 4th, 2018. The dominance was at 38%. So we've almost got an XRP all-time high with 61% Bitcoin dominance, which is now starting to fall off of a cliff. Doesn't take a genius to figure this out. And Smoke points out, remember, XRP only has to 20 times from current price levels to surpass Bitcoin. So if you got the dominance falling and XRP crushes it, remember, we got 4 or 5 times back in November. In 2018, before all the attacks on Ripple and XRP, we got, 60,000%? It jumped Ethereum and it was headed for Bitcoin. I believe that's why it was stopped. Crypto Week resumes with big votes expected in the House, including on the Genius Act, which could pass. Head to the President Trump's desk. Signing ceremony is already scheduled for tomorrow at the White House. It may be a margarita night for the digital asset investor tomorrow. We shall see. Over in the Senate, Senator Tim Scott's hosting banking committee member roundtable at 9 a.m. Industry participants, looks like Charles Hoskinson is going to be there. I'm sure there will be a lot more. Folks, It was never Circle. It's always been Ripple. It is and has always been Ripple. Now, don't forget, Circle was backed by Goldman Sachs. So make sure you understand, just like my father, the official father of the Digital Asset Investor channel, told me long ago, and I told you 5-7 years ago, nothing in finance happens without Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan. If you followed ETHgate, you know all about JP Morgan's involvement. Goldman Sachs was there too. Charles Hoskinson, I've played the video. Charles Hoskinson said they had Goldman Sachs developers. Joseph Lubin was from Goldman Sachs. If you think Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan were not aware and involved in Bitcoin and Ethereum from the very start, think again, folks. There's a reason that Ripple was fought the way they've been fought. It ends starting today. You could see that Ripple case end as well. Now, this is Andrew Ross Sorkin on CNBC doing what he does, propping up the conversation about that all of his masters tell him to. But once again, see, remember, as this is the lady that's the head of the New York Financial Services Department. Let me see, what was her name? Maybe I'll remember her name in a minute. Adriana Harris, not Adrian. Anyway, you'll get it. But he's talking about how Circle's the behemoth, but they're not. So, even with their stable coins, Circle has to give half the profits to Coinbase, is my understanding. Ripple does not. And on top of that, Ripple has a reserve of billions of XRP. Circle is not the behemoth. Ripple is, but all they can talk about is Circle because they got to keep the narrative going. And let me make a statement here. When this is over, legislation, Ripple case drop, watch. They're going to flip the script, and these guys are going to be talking about Ripple and XRP all the time. Watch.
Crypto legislation clearing a hurdle in the House. This after a 9-hour vote to establish the rules of debate, though, on the bills finally passed. Now, joining us to talk about the potential regulatory framework for crypto and what it all means is New York Department of Financial Services Superintendent Adrian Harris. Back in 2022, Harris passed stablecoin guidelines here in New York.
Wow.
We've made a lot of this, and I guess the biggest question is just how important is this bill ultimately? And if this all happens, what happens? I don't think people really actually even understand.
Right. Well, right now in the United States, there aren't really any rules of the road for crypto or stablecoin outside of New York and what we've done at DFS in the past 4 years. So it's really important that we have a national framework to govern this technology, especially when it comes to the supremacy of the dollar as the reserve currency. So putting this in place is going to be good for innovation, good for markets.
But just drill down, because I think people talk about Genius Act all the time, and they don't even know what they're talking about here. I mean, we have conversations on the set recently about tokenization. People are tokenizing private company stock, for example. I don't think this bill addresses whether that's legal or not, technically.
No, so I think it's really important to distinguish crypto assets, tokenization of real-world assets, and stablecoin, which is what Genius addresses, right? So Genius really takes from what we did in New York 3 years ago to put in place guidelines. There will have to be rules written, but things like one-to-one reserving. So to make sure there's $1 for every stablecoin that a stablecoin issuer issues, right? So that's backed one-to-one with cash or cash equivalents, that a consumer can redeem that stablecoin within a timely timeline. So,
are you of the view?
Okay, let's move on from that, because there's a lot of talk about the legislation. This thing's supposed to pass today, folks.
Normally, what we see. Thanks for having me. Great to see you. Thanks for being here. Normally what we see is Democrats kind of blocking.
This is one of the Democrats, is my understanding.
Some of these bills that the Republicans have wanted to get through. But in this case, you and a couple of your Democratic congressmen sent a letter to your colleagues suggesting that they actually vote for this bill, because even though.
That's because they know that there's a huge voting block of crypto people now.
The bill's not perfect. You think it would be worse to have no progress made?
That's right, Becky. You know, we've been working on these bills in some form or another for years to finally bring some certainty to the marketplace, to protect consumers. So you've got two really good bills that are the result of lots of bipartisan work over the years, and it's time we actually get these done. It's not only good for the economy and making sure that America leads, but to finally protect consumers from a lot of these snake oil salesmen and other crypto that's out there that, as you know, is not exactly on the up and up. It's finally time to actually have not only certainty from a regulatory perspective, but to have protections in place.
And what's the feedback you've gotten from your Democratic colleagues?
I mean, you've got two bills, right? The Genius Act, which we'll vote on first, as you mentioned, which defines stable coins, ensures that they're backed one-to-one by dollars or equivalents, and guarantees that in the world, the dollar remains king. That bill, I think you're going to see really strong bipartisan support for, and we've gotten very good feedback on that. The other bill, called the Clarity Act, will also get at least a few dozen, in my opinion, members on the Democratic side, in addition to a lot of Republicans, and that bill sets up the market structure, right, from CFTC and the SEC, and says who's in charge of what, which has been missing from the space now for many years. You're seeing a lot more Democrats over the week understand it, come on board. You've got some people on the outside who want to make everything about Trump, as you brought up, as always an issue. I think the big thing I keep saying to my colleagues is, do you want to make sure that consumers are protected and that
Okay, you get the point. They're going to vote for it. At least the smart ones are. Then here's Tom Emmer.
Well, there are three bills that we're going to be addressing today. One is a dollar-backed stablecoin bill called the Genius Act that came out of the Senate. This is a bill that literally is about exporting U.S. dollars all around the world. It may not be as big domestically to start with, although I think
replacing the petrodollar system.
Eventually it will be. But think about that cab driver down in Brazil who would love to do business in U.S. dollars, and right now he can't. But with a dollar-backed stablecoin, he'll be able to. This is about exporting U.S. dollars and solidifying the reserve currency status of the U.S. dollar. The other one is called the Clarity Act. This is a market structure bill. The problem we've had with getting new investment into this country is people don't know what regulator they're dealing with. They don't want to spend all kinds of legal fees fighting with the government over whether they're cash and they deal with the Treasury, whether they're a security and they deal with the SEC, or whether they are a commodity and deal with the CFTC. This gives clarity so people understand what they have to do business in this country. And then the last one, which is my bill I've been advocating for probably 5 or 6 years, is a prohibition of a central bank digital currency. Why is that important to our national security, Allison? Because for years, even Republicans years ago were saying, we're falling behind the Chinese. They have the digital yuan. You know what they use that for? That is a surveillance tool. They surveil their citizens. They build social scores based on your purchases, your habits, etc. That is completely against any American value that we know of. And we've got to prevent our central government from ever creating this surveillance tool here in the United States.
Yeah, those clowns that were in office before Trump. I'm not going to play any more of this. You get the picture. These guys they're going to get this done today, and I look forward to watching what the market does. I do want to play you this one. This is the new SEC chairman on this stuff.
House, of course, did, and that was the pushback. Can you talk to us a little about why that would be important to ensure that there is not a central bank cryptocurrency?
Well, I think it's best for that sort of thing to be left to the private sector. The government can mine the legal tender and the dollar itself, but the means of transfer and that sort of thing, I think, is best left to innovators. And we don't want to become like China, where you have the threat of a government that can run roughshod over people's bank accounts directly. So I think it's best to leave that to banks and financial institutions and whatever may develop in the next few decades, as far as where people put their money and how they transfer it.
You got that right. Trump, at the same time, Trump's drafted a letter to fire Jerome Powell. Then we have this from Smoke. Remember, the Genius Act will rapidly accelerate XRP's integration into the U.S. financial markets, which will support its price by attracting institutional investors. It's right here in the lawsuit. I'm assuming that's what this is from. A potential settlement aligned with the Genius Act stablecoin framework could accelerate XRP's reintegration into the U.S. financial markets. After all the regulatory capture that was uncovered in ETHgate, that. Okay, We're going to go into DAIXRP.com. That's the Patreon. Click join below any of my YouTube videos to join through there, or the subscribe button on X to join the group. In there, we're going to, it's always been Federal Reserve 2.0. That's what this is. That's what XRP is. That's why I plan on holding a lot of my XRP for a long, long time, maybe forever for me. I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe, hit the like button, tell your friends and family. Away we go.